Things are finished up here, and I'm really happy that they are. But got the engine track, the rip track put in, the spur back there, the spur up here, the two tracks on each side here, and the spot back there. So everything is done track wise for what originally was planned for the layout. There may be a little bit more that I do, but that's all future stuff, and I'm not going to worry about it right now. I've got some other stuff. The other projects that I talked about in the other clip are still needing my attention, and so this is where I'll be ending for a little bit with this layout. All that's left is the electronics and the electrical part of things. Got to get all the servos put in and wired up with the mounts. Need to get the track all wired up. Here's all the electronics and wire, or some of the wire, but the servos, Arduinos, touch sensor buttons, bolts and nuts for the mounts themselves. What I'm planning to do is have them, I'll put a little bit of the rod that I'm going to use into the hole that's on the switch, and drill some guide holes to then be able to mount these like thus, or whichever orientation isn't going to get hit by a nail. So that'll take probably just as long, if not longer, than it took me to get the layout all built with the bench work and the track. But did end up with a stick, probably a stick and a half of flex track left. These were kind of the only, there's one other smaller piece over in the pile that I could have added and been for sure it's a stick and a half, but I'm glad that I did buy that extra bundle of 5, or I would have been a little annoyed with myself. Back here, I had been debating on if I was going to go essentially all the way to the backdrop or not, and figured at this point I knew I'd have enough track, so I just did it. Call it good that way. And then all of the scrap pieces and ties, that what I'll end up doing with these is cutting off the spike heads that are on there and filling in the gaps that are in between. I might also go through and actually do some work on the ties that are in here and break them and do some work on it that they're a little older, but I don't know. That's a future problem. And then I've got most of the rolling stock out that I've got that's actually can be used right now. I still have 7 other beer can tank cars that I can end up putting up. But for now, this is where it's at. It's going to kind of be a standstill with having other stuff that I need to get done. But anyway, that's where we're at. Really happy with it. I've only pushed cars through things here and there just to make sure it works, but it's been fun anyway with that. So next steps will be the electronics and electrical, and hopefully we can have some trains running within the next month or so. It'll just kind of depend on how things fall. Now that I think about it, I do have another day or two break coming up from work. So I may end up using those, but we'll see. I digress. Thank you everybody for watching and sticking along with the journey. Well, we're back down here on the HO layout, and I thought that I was done with the track work. However, some things happened today, and I ended up doing some changes. And the reason for it was I was talking with a friend at our local NMRA meeting, and I had mentioned to him a while back that I'd been looking for some HO turnouts, and he said that he found some, and I was more than welcome to them if I could use them, because he's an SN3 modeler and he'd never use them. And when I saw them, I knew I could. And the original plan was that I would use them on some cassettes that I had planned to build coming off of the spurs that I have. And I figured that I could just use them there. And when I got looking at them, I noticed that I could easily take the switch machine off of them. And while I do like switch machines to an extent, I didn't really want this big clunky thing on them. In fact, I have two on the layout that this one I actually cut off, and you can see it that it was molded into the ties, and I wasn't really happy with that. And so that's why I threw that one back there. And the other one, I ended up keeping the machine on. But as you can see, I opened up one of the turnouts and got looking at it and realized I could probably get it swapped out. The differences on it was that this track here was shorter on this turnout than it was here. So I had to cut this one back a little bit. And as such, this was shorter this way than it was here by about 1/2 inch or so. You can kind of see that lined up there. And so I then looked at this curve and decided that I'd use the extra piece that I had and relay this curve as well as part of this swap out. I could have taken the piece I had cut here and put it over to here to lengthen it out and have this one match exact with this one. But I just didn't like it. It was just too small of a piece to really make it fit good. So I decided it was worth trimming this much off of the new piece of flex that I hadn't used and just pulling out the old one. I mean, the old one is still almost a full stick as well, so no big loss there. And I actually gained a little bit more to the radius, so this boxcar now rolls through it without any real issues. And I ended up having some credit and bought a gondola online, not realizing it was a 68-foot gondola. And oddly enough, it will go through even this. It is pinched. I do have to, you can hear it, but it goes through it. So I don't know if either of those cars will ever come over here, but I figured if the biggest cars will go through, everything else will go through. So that was that. The other thing with this is I may end up extending this track, just because of how long it is, but we'll see, how things go. The other piece that I had to replace, not really replace, just adjust a little bit was this turn, or okay, yeah, if I can talk. This track here, the curve didn't match exactly to what was there, and it was kind of pinched, and I wasn't a fan of how it looked. There was kind of a kink over here somewhere, and so I ended up just pulling it up and relaying it. The only thing that it did was push this piece out just a little bit further, so I just need to trim those back off. I kind of figured that wouldn't be that big of an issue, you know, where I could just play around there. So anyway, that is that for that. How many times can I say that in the sentence? But another thing was someone brought in some models that they weren't going to use. And I saw this, and this is what it looks like. I don't know if the base is there or not. It probably is. But I thought this would actually look pretty well to place here for the actual crane, where instead of having that backhoe over there be loading, I could just use that bucket dump. I kind of like the look of that. So it's a little different, a little older, which is okay. It will match kind of the era that this layout is going to be based on a little bit. I say a little bit because there's some newer cars that'll be mixed in. But I thought that would be cool to have here instead of just the backhoe, you know, lifting up the scrap metal and whatnot. So that's kind of the only changes with this. I did get a couple of the servos put into the switch machine, or the mounts, and got the throw bar wire cut in that, but I'm still working on that. So anyway, this is getting to be a long-winded video of its own, so we will just let it be its own thing. As always, thank you everybody for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and thank you for all of those that have subscribed and continue to subscribe. I greatly appreciate it as well. And with that, we'll call this good and see everybody in the next video.